Tere hommikust, tere tulemast Eesti Rahva Muuseumisse.
Good morning. Welcome to Tartu at the Estonian National Museum to the conference Illicit Trafficking in Cultural Objects Who Prevents Heritage. I'm really pleased to see so many of the audience. Thank you very much, everybody who's here. We are going to have a few changes in our agenda. It will be, the information will be available on the web. We have had slight problems with flights, but anyway, we'll survive. We are really pleased to have about 200 people online listening to us. So the topic seems to be very topical in our environment. So originally we decided to have an Estonian conference. Now it is an international one. And I'll give the floor, the opening, to Lobjakas, the chair of the ICOM Estonia National Committee.
Tere hommikust minu poolt ka, ei ole enam nii varane tund. Hea meel on näha kõiki teid saalis.
I'm glad to see everybody present.
Mida me tänasel ja ka homsel päeval käsitleme.
We are going to discuss today and tomorrow urgent topics. They are universal topics which have always been present and also problematic, but on the other hand, they are serious as of today and now. And these problems are much closer to us than maybe 20 years ago. I have to consider what's going on around us, political turbulence, digital media, online platforms, a number of challenges. So the environment actually determines our urgency of our topic. Well, illegal trafficking is something which ICOM has been aware of and dealt with for a long time. ICOM was created after World War II, and this topic has been on the agenda continuously. Today, we brought together the representatives of the heritage field, legislators, online and sales platforms, policy developers. We hope it will be useful for all of us. We should discuss how to prevent illicit trafficking, to discuss the responsibility which arises here. So we should be all stronger in our fight, and we should also be more aware how to protect our heritage. Today and tomorrow we'll discuss corruption, conflict financing, risk, black market, etc. It would be probably much easier if we would focus only history, but unfortunately we do have to discuss our daily problems. Sometimes it's more convenient to keep quiet about unpleasant topiks. So we are really grateful to people who have come here to share their experience, open up or reopen certain topics. I think the cases will help us to learn and deal with complicated situations in the future. I'm really pleased that so many of us, we have about 100 people present and twice that much online. Well, this is definitely a sign of the significance of the topic. Thank you very much for experts of different fields from different countries whose experience and knowledge will help us to have a creative atmosphere. I'm sure we are going to debate and discuss.
Miks me üldse saame siin konverentsil täna olla?
We can have this conference because ICOM Estonia participates in the international project PRISM with the aim not only to increase the awareness of museologists and others, but the aim is also to bring together people and promote networking of people who are involved in this field. We have to have courage to think critically and discuss these topics. Many thanks to our Estonian National Heritage Board for supporting us. Thank you very much to organizers, collective brain work who have all participated. So enjoy the conference.
Suur tänu, Kai.
Thank you, Kai.
Nagu Kai Lobjakas mainis, on kogu konverentsi suures toetamises the
conference has been organized thanks to the ICOM project PRISM, and there are with a number of countries participating in this project who all focus on the illegal trafficking issues. During these 2 days, we're going to discuss more detail this project. But in Estonia, we would not have been able to organize the conference if we hadn't had a fantastic partner, Estonian National Heritage Board. And it's my pleasure to give the floor now for greetings to Director General of the National Heritage Board, Marilin Mihkelson.
Tere hommikust.
Good morning.
Mul on äärmiselt hea meel teid
I'm
konverentsil
really pleased to greet on behalf of our colleagues from the Heritage Board. The topics of this conference are topics which we are all slightly aware of, but the extent is not always known or we underestimate it. Illicit trafficking of cultural goods is a daily work for me and my colleagues. We meet this problem quite frequently. And frequently we also feel that we are a bit late in our activities. Goods are moving, inadequate document, provenance is unclear. And here we ask, is it something which we or any of our partners should have noticed earlier? These are the moments when it's clear you have to look into the mirror, not to find a culprit, but to understand what we can do ourselves or what we can do together with our colleagues so that we would be a step ahead in future. Let's be honest, it's not just a criminal issue. The problem is there are rules, but they are unknown, or the implementation of these rules is not consistent. Of course, we can always collaborate better. Responsibility is something vague if it's not agreed upon. At this conference, we are going to discuss international networks, digital platforms, and black market. But as said, I think it's very important to look into the mirror ourselves, how to cultural goods move into our collections under our vigilant eye. We are part of a very active transit route. We can't allow being passive or pushing this problem to someone else. No.
selle konverentsi kõige väärtuslikum osa on see,
in my opinion, the most valuable part of the conference is that we are not going to discuss theory, but we are going to discuss real life, how to find solutions to real problems. We are looking for an answer who inspects, checks, and who will be responsible. To what extent do we check and inspect? Maybe expect someone else to do. But as Kai said, there will be several topics under discussion here which are not very comfortable, but I'm sure they are very important in order to combat illegal trafficking market. In order to be successful, we need cooperation and a favorable professional attitude, readiness to ask an additional question, check and recheck, and say no if necessary, even if when it seems to be slightly uncomfortable. I think that cooperation is a key issue of the entire topic, but cooperation is not something self-understandable. It's very important, and I'm really pleased that we have so many experts present, so many specialists present, and we have also people online. So I'm sure we'll have excellent dialogues and thoughts how to move forward. And to conclude, I'm not naive to believe in disappearance of the illicit trafficking, but we can improve our collaboration and become smarter. If we, by the end of this conference, are a little bit more attentive, a little bit more critical vis-à-vis ourselves or others, and maybe we have also created new contacts, then this conference has been a success. I do wish you good discussions, many smart ideas, share ideas, and talk to the colleague you haven't seen for a long time. Enjoy the day, enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Suur aitäh!
Thank you very much.
Ütlen nüüd ka tere enda poolt. Esindan ICOM Eestit, Eesti Rahva Muuseumit.
About me,
teadussekretär
I'm Agnes, Aljas,
modereerida meie esimeest
Research Secretary of Estonian National Museum. Welcome on behalf of us. I am moderator, Paneel 1, speak in a calm pace. We are not in a hurry. We'll have simultaneous interpretation, and we'll also time for questions. Raise your hand, use the microphone after every presentation. We have reserved the time for that. By way of context, I have to add, we have many people present who work in memory institutions, libraries, and other places. We have customs, prosecutor's office, online selling platforms represented, well, whatever you sell on the sales platforms. We have lawyers, we have art dealers, so I'm sure we'll have interesting 2 days. But a few words about the venue. We are in the Estonian National Museum, which is quite an old institution. It's an ethnographic museum focusing on Estonian and Fenno-Ugric culture, and we have been working on these premises for 10 years. When you arrived, you already noticed it's a monumental building in a very calm atmosphere. Why does the building look like this? This is a reference to the heritage after World War II. The original venue of the museum was damaged during the last war. There was heavy bombing of Tartu, and post-World War II, there was a Soviet military airfield here. And when Soviets left, this was an empty field, and in order to maintain the heritage, this new museum building was created. So architecturally, it reminds of the past, but gives a new meaning to it. It's a memory field, as the architects call the entire complex. The memory, remembrance, is part and parcel of our work. It's important for us. And in order to introduce the first panel, I would like to say that first we would like to give an overview of what's going on in Estonia, what do we see here, what are the basic problems and examples which we want to show here. It's my pleasure to invite here co-organizers of the conference, Signe Friedenthal and Nele Kangert. They will both speak during the first presentations. The topic, the black market, the illicit market of the cultural property, Estonia's challenges, and an EU border state.
Tere hommikust, head külalised ja kolleegid.
Good morning, dear guests, dear colleagues. It is a great pleasure for us that thanks to ICOM Estonia, for the first time in Estonia, in such a large auditorium, we can discuss the protection of cultural property. We will be focusing on the illicit trafficking in cultural property. I'm Signe Friedenthal. I work as an advisor on art heritage in the National Heritage Board, so I look into the export, import, transit issues, and the internal and international cooperation regarding this. Illicit trafficking also affects archaeology, and therefore, together with Nele Kangert, who is the advisor on Archaeological Finds in the National Heritage Board, we have made this effort together here. So we are also the Estonian experts in the work of the UNESCO Convention and the committee, and we're also taking part in the Baltic Region Heritage Committee work. Our presentation today is divided into two. First of all, I will pick up on what is cultural property, why we have to protect it, what are the challenges due to our geographical location, and the second part will focus on crime regarding archaeological heritage, also about how this property reaches the black market. I actually already gave you an introduction, so we can move on to the next slide. So what makes an item cultural property? It's just not an old or rare here. It is something that has a historical, archaeological, artistic or scientific value, and it carries something from our community's identity, common memory. Its true value lies in its connection to a place and the people whose story it tells. That is also why this international trade is regulated by various legislative acts. In Estonia, we have the following regulatory acts. We have the Heritage Conservation Act, Museums Act, and also the Export and Import Regulations for Cultural Property. These lay down the types of cultural property, the means how to protect it, and also the sanctions in case of infringements. In the penal code, it is also provided for what kind of actions are sanctioned if there are falsifications of documentation in case of trafficking. And there was a law passed in 2007 regarding the export, and the aim of this was to protect our most important cultural property, to avoid these pieces reaching other countries, and to have a better overview of what kind of pieces people would like to take out of the country. The new piece of legislation was criticized quite a lot at first. For instance, Jüri Kuuskema, the art historian, said that he wouldn't ever believe that such a foolish piece of legislation would ever be passed, and that it would be avoided or circumvented anyway. And he thought that it would be a huge blow to the local antiques businessmen, because it would affect the sale of antiques also to the tourists visiting the country. Yet everything that you find in antique shops is not cultural property, and you do not need to apply for a permission to export whichever piece of art. So in case there are missing documents, that some pieces are missing documents, it is very difficult to export them, and auction houses here have set the very good examples. They have set the bar very high, and thanks to that, the National Heritage Board has also come across various very interesting findings. We have found various pieces of artwork already. When you look at the research authorities and the collections, then the transfer of items between these institutions in different countries is also very well regulated. If the piece of art is a part of a collection or a research facility, then it is valuable for us. It is possible to temporarily take out pieces from the country, and it is also possible to bring them back into Estonia, which is perhaps even more important. The Export Act actually needs to be reviewed every now and then to make sure that all the limitations, everything is updated. I can give you the following example. These are two kopeiks, so they are both cultural property. On the left-hand side, you can see an archaeological finding. On the right-hand side, a motor vehicle, which was brought into Estonia, into the country, which is older than 50 years. And it was brought to Estonia before 1991. So preventing the illicit trade in cultural goods is a cross-border challenge, and therefore we do not only look into the internal legislation but also into the regulation at EU level, look into international conventions and agreements. The foundation here is the UNESCO Convention from 1970. The aim of this is to promote cooperation between countries to fight against the theft and smuggling of cultural goods, against illegal import and export. This convention entered into force regarding Estonia in 1996. In 2025, Estonia was elected as a member of the committee of this convention for 4 years. And last year, UNESCO opened the world's first virtual museum of stolen cultural goods. It's a pleasure for me to say that Estonia is also involved in this project, and this museum exhibits stolen cultural property, which was stolen in 1999, sculptures from the Karma Church. This is aimed at younger target groups. It also helps you become more aware of this illicit trafficking and gives us hope that this cultural property will eventually find its way back. An important step from UNESCO is creating a database for cultural property, and there's also an international code of ethics for dealers in cultural property, which they have updated. UNESCO also supports countries in the return of these goods. Estonia, within the framework of this convention, has also returned cultural property twice, which has been detained at the border of Estonia. But you will hear in more detail about this during the following presentations. Now, coming back to the export of cultural property, I can give you the following examples. What items are intended to be exported from Estonia? The Orthodox icons are quite popular in this regard. There's a lot of international interest toward this. You can find them in the antiques market in Estonia. We also have private collectors in Estonia. So in addition to collecting these items, they also want to resell them. For instance, there's this one icon which was detained in 2004 on the border. Customs sent an inquiry to the National Heritage Board during the investigation. There was nothing suspicious detected. Already 5 months later, it was resold to the US. Once again, all the icons you find on the market are not cultural property in the meaning of our regulation. What we consider cultural property is this sacred object, sacred property which was made before the year 1945. And cultural objects are also the sacred prints related to Estonia, which are older than 100 years. It means that in case of every export application, we first look into whether the icon is related to the heritage of Estonian churches or the old believers. In the 1980s and 1990s, there were many robberies taking place in Estonia. Thieves stole valuable icons, church property, other historical objects. Databases play an important role here. For instance, we have this register of stolen cultural monuments. It includes information on 567 stolen monuments. Of these, 312 are icons. Several cases have also been registered in the Interpol database. From there, you can also find information regarding pieces stolen from museums. Together with the customs authority, we keep a close eye on the export and import regulation of the EU and make sure that the cultural property coming from third countries that they have been exported from their points of origin legally. So sometimes an import permit is required. For instance, we have had cases where icons of Ukrainian origin are exported from Estonia, which were imported before the escalation of the war in Ukraine. The possibility for requirement of an export permit is derived from this ICOM regulation. I also consulted regarding the specific case with the expert in Ukraine who said that yes, and there is a ban already in place since 1999. And that means that you have to apply for a specific permit from the Ministry of Culture in Ukraine. And to ascertain whether it is a cultural value for Ukraine is something that only experts and competent authorities can decide upon. The Ukrainian cultural property is in a very vulnerable position, which means that we cannot support the circulation of pieces which have suspicious origin. So it means that asking for documents of origin has significantly reduced the number of applications for export permits, but this doesn't mean that the export has stopped. No, so here the responsibility lies within all the market participants, the ethics and the legality of their operations. As a second example, I can give you my first example. It was very eye-opening for me. In December 2023, a Latvian transport company contacted our board and wished to take from Germany to Kyrgyzstan an airplane from the Second World War. And Estonian Customs referred this to the National Heritage Board because this piece did not have the required documentation. Customs looked into our legislation, according to which these military items, which are older than 50 years, might be pieces of cultural property, might need a permit to be exported. In addition to that, you have to apply for a permit for these pieces, which are older than 75 years, according to the European Union export regulation. So I contacted the border facility there to ascertain which documents were still missing. And a couple of days before the New Year's Eve, my question, of course, caused quite a bit of a stir there. It was then ascertained that the plane was not found on any of the border crossing points. Then I had to find out what kind of a plane we were dealing with, what kind of documents were necessary, and what was the country of origin. Was it the USA or was it Germany? There was also suspicion, which was later confirmed by our experts, that the Jalalabad City Museum of Local History, which was marked as the receiver, most probably does not have any historical interest nor the resources to be able to purchase this $1 million worth rare aircraft, very rare Junkers aircraft. But most probably it is of interest to some Russian private collectors, and a transit is necessary due to the war in Ukraine in order to circumvent the sanctions imposed on Russia. Since the plane had nothing to do with Estonia but still needed a permit to be exported from the EU, we had to contact our German colleagues, and in the end the permit was issued to the owner. In February 2024, the plane finally reached Estonia. It was packed into boxes. It was accompanied with the required documentation, with the permits. According to the permits, this was a museum item. It wasn't a plane. That meant that the transit via Russia was not forbidden, and it wasn't possible to put a stop to its movement. So it started moving towards Kyrgyzstan. Here you can see some photos the Jalalabad Museum, from the Jalalabad Museum to where the plane was sent. You can see the main entrance here, corner devoted to the local Austrian astronauts, ethnographic exhibitions here. In reality, all our suspicions became true. It didn't take long for investigative journalism to track down the companies linked to a Russian businessman. One of them was registered in Kyrgyzstan, and it was actually mentioned also in the documentation accompanying the Junkers. And despite the sanctions in place, so it was possible to import this aircraft and their parts to Russia. We found out that it was now in a Ural mining and metallurgical company museum complex in Verkhnya Pushma in Russia. This case highlighted how important it is to collaborate between cultural and customs authorities to have an international network in place. Cultural goods are not just desirable collector's items, but they can also be related to money laundering schemes and other illegal activities, including the aim could be to evade sanctions, to finance terrorism. Another good lesson that we learned was that some exports might seem suspicious up to the final end, but there might not be always sufficient legal basis to put a stop to it. This in turn encouraged us to contribute into prevention, to strengthen the cooperation network, and to approach more broadly the issue of illegal trade. The aim is to understand what is going on in our art world, the antiques market, and how altogether we can put a stop to this illegal trafficking in cultural property. Not a single museum or private collector should be proud of having an item the origin of which is suspicious. The transparency of the art market, collaboration, being responsible is not just purely good practice, it's a sign of quality for this entire field. Everyone can contribute to the prevention of illegal trade. And we can do it as private persons, as companies, as state institutions. This way, we care about our own cultural space and cultural heritage, as well as the cultural heritage of the whole world. I would hereby like to conclude now. I will give the floor to Nele.
Aitäh, et mina siin jätkan siis.
Thank you. I will continue and focus on the archaeological findings. What we see is that in Estonia in late 90s, early 2000s, we had also cultural goods coming from churches to the illicit market. There were many thefts, but now most of the trafficking is in archaeological find. We are external border of the European Union and we are a transit country. But what is an archaeological find? In a way, we all know it's something old, valuable, ancient items. Let's take a closer look at the Estonian legislation. We have a Heritage Conservation Act, which stipulates that archaeological find is an object or a set of objects created by human activity, and it's sedimented or hidden in the ground, and it doesn't really have an owner. It's difficult to establish the owner. Archaeological finds in Estonia belong to the state, but our legislation has a number of articles to protect the finding spot, the area you can't excavate as a finder. But in order to encourage your mental work, so what's here? It's an archaeological finding. It's salted pork in a metal can hidden in 1940s by our forest brothers. Well, this is valuable, it's a cultural property, but you can't identify the owner. So we are not talking only about distant past, but also some findings of the 20th century. So what's the value of an archaeological find? We can't really separate it from its find spot. Archaeologists can do its research only if they have some kind of contacts. And it's a question to all Estonians present. What's here? What can you see? A ship? Well, yes, quite right. This is the first Viking ship from the Salm area. This discovery changed our understanding of that era. This is a slide I always show to students during trainings. If you go and do your research, you find something and all of a sudden you have just nails, but you may completely destroy a Viking ship. So 2008, the very first finding was made in the Salme village, and everybody in Estonia and outside became aware of it. Well, actually, there in Salme, in the village, there isn't anything much to see. Well, our tourists were really surprised. Well, yes, we have marked the finding spot. This is what you can see on the spot. But now, what does the archaeological find mean? It means identity. It's our heritage, which tells us about our past. And this is a wall painting from Salme, a basic school. A pupil made it. And this is a new slogan of the school is the strength of Töll, the perseverance of the Vikings and the wisdom of ancestors between two seas. Well, now we have a Viking burger stall in the Salme village, but now you can buy it in other places in Estonia as well. So it means international attention, tourists, and the entire Viking topic is now very important in marketing the island of Saaremaa. Maybe some of you have seen the international exhibition in Stockholm dedicated to the history of this case. So what can be the damage of what's done? There may be tremendous damage when just excavating archaeological sites. It's not a couple of hundred of euros which these nails would have given you when sold, but are talking about tens or hundreds of thousands, which is can create a major cultural, historical damage. Archaeological crime is actually quite clandestine. You don't really see its signs anywhere on the ground. There may be unknown archaeological sites where excavations take place. There are no traces left, and the items end up in the illicit market. We see the consequences. There are online auctions where archaeological finds are on sale. Well, this is an example also from the Salme area. Probably excavated in that area. That's an axe and a spearhead. We've gotten just an information that this was sold for thousands of euros in Finland. We really don't know from where they were excavated or where this find ended up. Well, sometimes we can see the excavated landscape. This is an example from Valga County in Estonia. An excavator messed up a medieval Catholic chapel in the 13th, 18th century village cemetery. The police forces started investigations, but it failed, so we really don't know what was discovered. So, what's the legislation in Estonia, the crime and punishment? We have different agencies whose responsibility is to investigate heritage crimes. We have National Heritage Board, who is responsible for unlawful use of search devices, searching also in a buffer zone. And if necessary administrative procedure will be launched by the Heritage Board. But we also have a Police and Border Guard Board, and it deals with criminal offences. If there's been a major damage to our protected heritage site, it will be a crime investigated by police, and police investigation will also be there when there has been a misappropriation or embezzlement of finds. Fortunately, we do have experience to deal with bigger looting cases, been able to identify the criminals and conditional imprisonment as a sentence. In 2005, there was an Ubina Viking treasure looted. This is one of the cases. So the Viking-era coins were stolen and sold in German markets. So what are the archaeological findings which are excavated in Estonia? We are part of the Viking area. We've also been area of wars and conflicts. We have a number of coin hoards. And they are easy to find and easy to sell. But there are also many very beautiful items. ornaments, weapons, quite popular. Goods are also artifacts related to World War II. There's been military burial bases have been covertly excavated. So, where do the finds go? The illegal market, there is a major problematic point, and that's online selling. We have osta.ee in Estonia, from where we can get information about the buyers and take further steps. But here are two fresh examples of the last 6 months or so. And we see that these finds are sold publicly. I'm very grateful to the seller who sold this silver coin. He said, I had a detector discovered and separated these items. Were excellent. Even the location has been indicated here. I do understand a hoard has been excavated and it's been sold, and in this case we do have launched a police investigation. I do hope that will be resultful. And a very fresh example, it's from January. It's a discovery from the old town of Tallinn. It's part of the 17th century window. An optimist was selling it for 10,000 euros in osta.ee. But couldn't find a buyer. So now we are communicating with the seller. But this is an archaeological find. We are a source country, we are also a transit country. And over the last 10 years, been several cases of Ukrainian cultural goods detected on the border of Estonia and EU. This is a heritage crime which is becoming more frequent. The finds leave the country. And we know that many of these cases have been executed via Russia. The 1970 convention was implemented in Estonia in 2015 when we could return archaeological finding a Viking Age sword to Ukraine. This is coming across the Russian border and moving towards Western Europe. And here is a well-known example, just a couple of years old, the border crossing point between Estonia and Russia. More than 200 coins, metal and silver ornaments were detained. There were also Scythian-style decorative plaques. It was a major headache as an expert to identify from where these archaeological finds come from. Fortunately, we ended up contacting Ukrainian archaeologists, and they proved that it's probably a finding from the coast of the Black Sea from different archaeological sites. It was a challenge to identify the price of the finding. But how do you price this find? Yeah, it's relatively easy with coins. We have legal auctions, catalogs. The coins were about 30,000 euros, but as regards the golden items, it was a real headache. The criminal case, smuggling cases starts from 40,000 euros. 70,000 euros was the estimated cost, but another headache. Okay, we are now dealing with an investigative authority. They ask, what's the damage created? Okay, it's very difficult to say, even, especially if we don't have a context of the find. How much does the Roman coin cost? Okay, you can buy for 5 euros, sometimes 30 coins. But if we take the Estonian context, we know that from the 2nd or 3rd century AD, we have about 100 items or so. The largest Roman coins hoard has 51 coins. How much does it cost in eBay? What's the cost of a Roman coin in Estonia? But now, how do the archaeological finds end up in an illegal or illicit market? There are hobby detectors. For some, it's a hobby. For some, it's full-time work. In different countries, this issue is regulated in a different way. In Estonia, I think that prevention is important. And metal detecting in Estonia is regulated, it's allowed, but you need a training, a basic knowledge of archaeology, and you also need a license. We have also determined the conditions and the sites where metal detecting can take place, and you have to inform the state immediately. Well, we have many problems if we look at the situations. The fines end up in the black market. But we do have a regulation, and this has helped to create a community, a collaborative community. And when we talk about the black market, that our National Heritage Board does not have enough resources to keep an eye on the illicit market and online platform, and then actually many of the coins and finds reach us thanks to the licensed detectors who keep an eye, a community eye, on the environment. To conclude, just as Signe has said, the circulation of illicit archaeological finds is problematic. We are on the external border of the European Union. The finds, cultural property moves out of Estonia. We are a transit country. But I encourage you to think about the situations. We can't always very clearly say what's the value of a find. Talking about cultural value, we talk about major damage to economy, to the community, and to the cultural heritage in its broadest sense. Thank you.
The microphone is not switched on for the speaker. All right, now everything is fine. Thank you so much, Nele and Signe. I'm pretty sure there are some questions for you. The first introductory question will come from me. Looking into the perspective of museums, archives, libraries, when we look into a small museum and let's say a person walks up to that museum with a box full of coins, then which question should one ask him or herself? How do you understand that this is cultural property or not? Let's say the coins are from the first half of the 20th century. What should a museum do in this case? This is a perspective I'd like to touch upon. And is there any difference between archives, museums, libraries in Estonia? So talking of coins. Yes. When we're talking about archaeological findings, then when we are faced with a situation where a person comes knocking on the door of a small local museum and says that I have some nice archaeological findings here in this box, I found them, but I would like to give them to you for the museum to obtain them. What I would like to stress upon is to encourage people to turn first to the National Heritage Board, and secondly, to not accept findings that are not accompanied with any information regarding the place of where it was found. Or at least one should try to get as much information from that person as possible, because museums know very well that if there is no context to that finding, no background, then if there's no story accompanying it, then it's quite an, let's say, quite an insignificant finding in the end also for the museum to just have that something there. I would like to add that the first question to be asked is, where did you get this from? If there is an unclear provenance there regarding an item, then this kind of an item should not be accepted. In English, we have the saying attic tactic, so that means you found something from the attic. This is a response that one must not accept. I can see more people wishing to ask questions. Thank you for this very exciting presentations. I have a question regarding the osta.ee web environment. We know that you can use search words there, and then you get these notifications via email if the search words or specific items have been put up for sale. Have you also entered these search words there, and do you receive notifications via email? Do you sometimes also look into this osta.ee and look for some kind of ads there? We do not do it regularly, but our level of awareness, if I can mention it, and I don't know if Kristina is also here, but tomorrow, the director of this osta.ee portal is going to meet up with us. During our recent meetings, we have shared our points of concerns. We looked into possible collaboration, and I think that we can collaborate better also with the supervisory aspect here. But this kind of a general searching and looking for something is something that we have not had the resources to carry out. I am the public prosecutor's office. While listening to you, I came up with the following question. Let's say a person shows up with some kind of a treasure at the door of a museum, and you want to just push it away and say, thank you very much, but it's too suspicious, so we will not accept it. What follows after this point? Do you have any idea as to what the next step should be? Because otherwise that cultural possible cultural property will just go missing and we will not know where it originated from or where it will be heading to. No, I don't think it's right to say thank you very much and just go away, because it means that all these items will be sent out by mail, by packages somewhere, via eBay, wherever. So yes, we will have no understanding of where it will move forward. And the archaeologists and other experts here, when we're talking about coin treasures, which have already reached the point of an auction house, and actually an expert based on the components of this treasure can detect the region, the area that it might be originating from. So actually this finding does provide us with quite a lot of information. And I know that when we talk about international experience, then I have listened to presentations how it is possible to retroactively detect the point of origin of a finding, look into the chemical elements, look into the soil samples. So it is possible to find all this information also from the materials there. But yes, the idea here not to just accept everything that, yes, I will take this piece of property and the person who brought it just disappears. The aim is to also find out the background to this piece of property. And the National Heritage Board is not also aimed at sanctioning people. Our primary goal is to collaborate, and when these anonymous findings do reach us, then usually people are sensible. And if you explain this background to them, they are not living in constant fear of being prosecuted by the public prosecutor's office. So most often we do receive information regarding the background. Is it an issue that within the EU you do not require export or import documentation? It means that this movement is not controlled. Have you thought about preventing it, about preventing the movement of goods within the EU? Have you considered putting any measures in place? I mean, within the EU, it is very difficult to control this unless people themselves apply for documentation, because we have open borders, goods move across borders. Of course, it will get stuck somewhere. I know that our colleague from the customs can tell you more about it. But within the EU, either it's a random check or the item comes to a stop somewhere on the external border of the EU, and then we realize that the documentation is faulty or whatever. But I'm sure that Elika will tell you more about it. So then she will tell you how these items, without any supporting documentation, reach the border points. If there are no more questions, then thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. It is my great pleasure now to continue. We will continue with insights to what is going on in Estonia. We'll look into the border of Estonia. Yes, the borders are open, but we do nevertheless have a border to our country. It's my pleasure to invite the head of prohibitions and restrictions of the Estonian Tax and Customs Board here up onto the stage, Erika Brosman.
Head konverentsil osalejad, head veebis osalejad.
Dear participants here and via the web. Hello, my name is Erika Brosman and I work as the head of prohibitions and restrictions in the Estonian Tax and Customs Board. We have this small team there and we look into almost all of the prohibitions and restrictions and regarding any kind of products and goods. Cultural goods are just one part of this total amount of goods, the endangered species, fertilizers, we look into food safety, etc. My team is working on the supervision of various categories of goods. And when we now look into the possibility of control and detection in case of detecting illegal cultural goods, When we look at detection, then quite often we find something, and at first glance we don't even understand what it is. What is it that we detected? So a lot of work follows from this point onwards. Our aim is to detect it, to seize it, and then look and take it from there and look into whether it is a cultural property or whether it is something illegal. We have colleagues here also from outside of Estonia, so briefly I will tell you about the Estonian Tax and Customs Board. So it is a joint authority. We work together, tax and customs. Of course, in order to be successful, we need the necessary means to reach our goals. Our aim is to efficiently collect taxes, and our aim is to protect the society as well as the economy. We collect 85% of the state budget revenues. We also collect custom duties. We stand for fair competition. We also check sanctioned goods to make sure that there is no movement of these goods to help to contribute to the ending of the war in Ukraine. We fight against organized crime, which is also very important today. We have investigators. We have misdemeanor proceedings, and we also have the capability for criminal proceedings. Where are we located? This was one of the last questions also. When we were talking about the movement of goods from country to country, we have no border crossing points. We have this unit which is portable, to put it like this. They carry out controls based on risk assessment. We have the mobile units. They are very efficient in their work. Near the Ikla border point, we don't see them, but we do see them on the roads, driving from point A to point B. So they are the units covering our internal borders. We have border points, of course, on the eastern side. We have the unpredictable neighbor there, the Russian Federation. You can see 3 border crossing points with Russia. You can see them on the slide. Narva, there on the eastern side. This was not decided on the Estonian side, this was decided on the Russian side. The trucks are not allowed to pass through. Only pedestrians are allowed to cross the border. We have the Luhamaa border crossing point also in the south. And as you can see, they are not open 24/7. During the night, these points are closed due to sanctions, due to possible infringements here. The railway crossings are open 24/7, and of course the passenger terminal in the airport is always open. We have 3 ports, Paldiski, Muuga and Sillamäe. These are the larger ports. Muuga is the most important one. There's a lot of trade taking place there with third countries. Sillamäe is quite calm right now, also due to sanctions, because for a long time our trade partner, a large trade partner for us, was the Russian Federation. And today this trade has decreased significantly. Of course, courier services, mail services, they transfer a lot of goods nowadays. And there's parcel delivery. This is one of the biggest deliverers to find the needle in the haystack. We have very limited, restricted resources, and to find illicit goods from packages is a huge job for us. Looking into the challenges regarding illicit cultural property, what are the illicit cultural property items for customs? First of all, we have to check whether there is an export permit, whether there's an import permit available, whether it is allowed to cross the border with this item. If there is a temporary permit and it has expired and the product has not reached point B on time, that also already stands for a violation of the regulation. In Estonia, internally, it is allowed to export cultural goods to another country based on a permit. So if cultural goods taken from Estonia to Latvia without a permit, they are transported without a permit, then this is considered illegal activity. Counterfeit of cultural goods or improperly or illegally acquired cultural goods, and that is another issue here. Then stolen cultural goods, also illegally excavated cultural objects, archaeology here that Nele mentioned. One thing is the actual item, but also then we look into the actual place of finding, where it comes from, where it originates from. We also have sanctions in place. We're not just talking about Russia or Belarus, but also about Syria, other countries, Turkey. Another challenge is the complexity of our legal environment. There are many prohibitions regarding many different goods. We have about 700 regulatory legal acts that we have to be acquainted with, we have to implement. As for cultural goods, there are the various legal acts in place. So we have the EU's Export and Import Acts. We have our own internal Act on Cultural Goods. And of course, we have the legislation from third countries or from other member states of the EU. They can all differ from each other, and every time we come across the question whether this item has been taken out of the country legally, based on which piece of documentation. Digitalization, it is a challenge on the one hand, because we have to improve our systems constantly, that it would be easier to check all these permits. So this kind of updating and constant improvement requires financial resources. But on the other hand, it is very good, because nowadays falsification and counterfeiting is easier than ever before. But falsification of electronic permits is more complex than falsifying paper documents. We, of course, also make an effort to amending legislation. We're also involved in this process. Looking into the new challenges on sanctions, of course, in February 2024, everything changed for us. That was the beginning of the warfare in Ukraine, and sanctions were put in place for Russia and Belarus. Russia is our neighboring country, so that is the one affecting us the most. So everything changed radically, because we had never before had to check such a vast amount of sanctioned goods. We still had the same amount of resources available, and now we have several sanctions packages already in place. So we now have the most recent 20th sanctions package now already in place, and it also refers to cultural goods, luxury goods, collections that are more than 100 years old, refers to paintings, any antique items. These items can be taken to Russia only if their value of one single item is less than 300 euros. And you can see a typical picture here of an item which people have wished to take out of the country. And each and every time we have to evaluate if it's worth more than 300 or less than 300 euros. And of course, each and every time people claim that it is worth exactly 299 euros. So this is a huge challenge for us. E-commerce, another huge challenge, because it is true that the parcels are moving here and there in vast amounts. Trade is taking place on the internet. But these items, in reality, in the end, move across the borders, and it is our job to detect them. Artificial intelligence, our friend and our adversary, yes, of course, it makes our work easier as well. We use it quite a lot. But we cannot assume that people who want to violate the law, that they, in case of document falsification, they also use the help of AI. I also looked into a contract which was written I wanted to draw up a contract in English and Chinese, and it actually took me about a minute, even less than a minute, to draw it up with the help of AI. I couldn't, of course, add an official seal to it, and the AI refused to officially stamp it. Yes, the world is constantly changing. We must be prepared to move along with these changes. And some examples now of real life. Is this cultural property? It's a statue. We can assume that it's worth less than 300 euros. There's an invoice referring to 244 euros accompanying the statue. It's by Tsiparos, a Romanian author. It's a statue of Dorga, the goddess of victory. Of course, it causes suspicion and doubts. It's actually a huge statue. It looks small here. Marble, bronze, ivory have been used here for this statue. The invoice is drawn up by a taxi company. It doesn't own a single taxi, single car, no employees. And internet searches are carried out by our employees. They are very good at this to find preliminary information. And this refers to this statue being worth rather about 60,000 euros. So it is, of course, seized. And here now the National Heritage Board, our irreplaceable collaborator, gives its assessment that it is not a piece of cultural property. No permits for export are needed, but it's sanctioned. Yes, it's sanctioned because it's worth more than 300 euros. And then we find out that ivory has been used here, and ivory can be exported only with a permit from CITES. So what happens then? I don't know, because these proceedings are still ongoing. Moving on to smuggling. A recent finding from Hungary. And this is also one thing hindering the detection of these things, because in case of archaeology, we talk about very tiny items sometimes. It's easy to find them. And these pieces were hidden in a soda bottle. It was covered in tape, and it had just been thrown on the back seat. They were just plastic bottles containing archaeological items. So all these hidden small items are a huge challenge for us. We constantly search for them. Have the items been stolen? Is that possible? A possibility? Well, that is always a question that we're faced with. Does the person have any right to even have those items, to transport these items somewhere? There's a case here illustrating the same question. There was a question regarding what is going on between the EU member states. This was discovered in our old harbor in Tallinn. Our group was checking the Helsinki-Tallinn traffic, the ships moving between the two countries, and these icons were detained because we suspected that perhaps the person has no right to have these objects. One of them reminded us of an item which in 1993 had been stolen from Helsinki, an icon. So we sent out an inquiry, and expertise was carried out, a check, and these items were transferred to the Finnish police to take it from there. So it is possible to detect items like this. Has the item left the country of origin legally? A very good example here, a statue of a Buddha, which we detected. It was not an illicit piece of cultural goods. It was detected at the Narva border point. Cars were allowed to pass through this point back then. It was from Cambodia, it's a Buddha statue. We took it to the Heritage Board to be checked there. And of course, they contacted Cambodia because we assumed that perhaps it had left the country of origin illegally. Fortunately, in case of this statue, the controls were carried out very efficiently by the National Heritage Board, and also we received a response from Cambodia who said that for them it is not a very remarkable piece of art. It doesn't require any permit to be exported from the country of origin, but they did give us praise that Estonia actually keeps a close eye on possible cultural values from Cambodia. And an old story here. We're talking about illicit trafficking here, smuggling. And the customs officials from Narva contacted me and said that they found a hidden painting in a car. They described it that it looks old and horrible, according to their own words, that looked ugly, and that it was accompanied by a certificate. Unfortunately for us, the people who are active on the illegal market sometimes make these, they behave hastily and make these mistakes. If you have a piece of artwork and the certificate there in the same spot, then it makes you wonder whether it is in fact valuable. The first inquiry was sent out to the National Heritage Board, and they sent a response asking, where is this painting? And I answered, it's in our office there. And then they asked whether we could perhaps put it somewhere in a safer place, because Alexei Munyavlevsky's painting of a girl with a red hat was sold for 16 million euros at the Sotheby's auction house, and there's a big chance that this piece of artwork might be just as valuable. So of course, for such specific cases, we need a place where to store them safely. It's a long story, in fact, but in the end, it turned out that the certificate had been counterfeit. We don't know it for sure because the gallery of Tretyakov had a different opinion from us regarding the taking down of a monument in Tallinn, and we didn't receive a sufficient response from them back then. There was some mention of it in media that the gallery of Tretyakov is actually falsifying these certificates. So as a result of the expertise carried out, this painting was declared a counterfeit one. It was confiscated, and it was then taken from there. So when we see a document which is accompanying an item that has been hidden, well, we don't know whether it is a genuine one or authentic one or not. Nele already mentioned the price of the items. What is the price of the items? If it's valued at more than 40,000, you can continue with criminal proceedings. It was another case. A truck was taken to be checked based on a risk assessment. Somebody just sensed that this truck needs to be checked. The transporter had not really thought things through, hadn't considered how to smuggle these illicit goods across the border, and the driver started hiding them only at the point when the control proceedings were already initiated. And of course, when somebody is hiding something, and then you try to also find it. He also tried to. There were also all kinds of things taking place there, but everything was caught on camera. So he tried to hide them here and there in every possible location, but everything was detected. The items were very tiny. They had been hidden in all kinds of locations in that truck. In summary, what can we say? Coming back to what was already mentioned, Estonia is a transit country. We are the window to Europe. We check both ways, both directions. Right now, we check export towards Russia 100%. We have to do it due to the sanctions. We are most certainly a transit country, yes. Do these cases give us reason to believe that we are faced with organized crime? Absolutely, yes, of course. That is the case. And it is also linked to international organized crime. That is something that is evident here. And we can also say that the black market is international. But what would help us? Yes, so we already mentioned these hurdles, the obstacles, but what can help us? Of course, training our officials, the experience, their gut feeling when picking out the objects. These are all that we have have all the systems in place that help us with our risk analysis, risk sampling. This helps us a lot. But there's also this interest, and the interest is important, that our customs officials are interested in cultural property. That is such a nice thing to see, that you are interested in this, and that maybe makes you also be more keen on searching for these objects. Risk information is very important, analysis, profiling, the databases on stolen items. The more information we have, the better it is for us. Other countries also often notify us. You can see this on this slide. Items stolen from the Helsinki Orthodox Church. Other countries inform us of these cases, so we know what to keep our eyes, what to be more alert for, what kind of items. Then we have the national red lists. One more example coming from the Ukraine. And of course, the expertise. What kind of item we are faced with? We've come across several cases where at first glance you don't know if it's some kind of an antique item. We thought it was like a torture equipment, but then we found out that it was just a dog leash, like a collar leash, and that it was just something meant to protect the dog from being attacked by wolves. But at first glance, we thought it was some kind of a torture device. In a small country like Estonia, we cannot survive without cooperation. A very good partner for us is the National Heritage Board, also the Police and Border Guard Board, with whom we collaborate on the borders, Europol, Interpol. I have received information from them. I have provided information to them. We have our own liaison officer working there. Then museums, art experts. Sometimes we need to store items somewhere, so they play an important role as well, also for expertises. And then, of course, our collaboration with third countries. So we have international trainings, workshops, other working parties coming together. One more example of this unique collaboration. You can see the picture here. So we are a small country. We try to collaborate as well as possible. Customs were asked to come and help out with this mobile X-ray machine to look into the church of St. Nicholas, the altarpiece there. And we went there to help them because it's not possible to transport such a huge item anywhere. So we went there with our portable mobile X-ray machine. So this is the collaboration that we have in place. We've helped several churches to check on the altars, check on possible sculptures there, and also to help with the restoration of these items. And to conclude with, I would like to say that customs officers, in most cases, or quite often, we know how the story is going to end, but we rarely know as to how the story began. Another very nice example here, you can see that we are giving back or returning to Ukraine the detected archaeological goods. And this story had a very nice ending, but we don't know how it started. We know that there was a driver of a car trying to hide these items, where these items came from whom, from where they were excavated. We do not have the answers to these questions in most cases, although we would like to have those answers because this would make all the stories even more exciting. I can confirm that Estonian customs officials will continue the fight against the trade in illicit cultural property. We keep looking for them, we keep trying to detect them in order to give them to their legal owners or back to the country where they originate from. Thank you.
Thank you, Elika. Do we have some quick questions? Okay, my question. But how do these stories start? We don't really know. Take this Alexei von Javlinsky's painting. It's so expensive, even if it was a fake. 2 years it was impossible to identify whether it was a fake or not. But it was an excellent fake. But my question is, why is no one looking for them? They are very expensive items. We have another story I didn't tell you. The mythic case when pedestrians brought 4 large landscapes, a Madonna and Jesus child. Okay, so four paintings altogether were brought in sports bags across the border from Russia. But you know, the story wasn't okay. I bought it at the market. It's a gift for my granny. It took us for a lot of time to identify, together with Viljar Vissel, a former colleague, what's the meaning of the story. No, finally, it became evident there's been an exhibition from France and other countries. Exhibition was in Russia, and then 4 paintings were stolen. Well, we managed to detain them, and they were taken back to the galleries. And I really saw how these paintings were taken back to the original galleries, special clothing, special trucks, but no one noticed when they were stolen. Thank you very much for an interesting presentation. I am Janik, a museologist. I have a question which arose from Nele's topic. The financial estimate of the value of the cultural property. Isn't it possible to have the cultural social context or coefficient so that we wouldn't have to consider only the market value? Well, we don't really have this system as of today. Would it be possible to create a system like that? This would be most helpful. There were examples of golden and silver ornaments. How do you put a value to items which are several hundred years older than Christ? How do you assign value to it? Okay, you can estimate the value of the precious metals. But we could have a better system to identify the cost, the price. It would simplify our life. Okay, there may be a criminal case or not a criminal case, but when we communicate with the heritage board, then the question arises, is it above or below 300 euros? Yeah, we look for analogy online, but it's not really easy to identify the price or cost. Yeah, there could be a different system or approach. Actually, there were 2 figures mentioned. You had 300 euros previously. 40,000 was mentioned. Well, 40,000 is very, very important for us because this is administrative or misdemeanor procedure until that amount. Well, the misdemeanor procedure is very different from criminal procedure. So the borderline is 40,000 between these 2 procedures.
I'm going to ask in English, if that's okay. No. I saw that in the viral collaboration you don't have listed Frontex, and I wanted to know how is the collaboration between these bodies? Is it only through consultancy or educational programs? Is it top to the bottom, and how do these programs develop? Thank you.
I myself am not that much connected to Frontex, but I know that our colleagues are part of that project, and unfortunately I don't know all the details, ins and outs about that. So, or maybe I didn't understand your question fully.
Translator is speaking in Estonian, I believe, not in English.
I think she doesn't find herself specialist, if you were asking about this.
Frontex, yeah.
Yes.
No, it's the translator was speaking in Estonian and not in English.
Sorry. Sorry. Jaa, ei, vabandust. Tõesti, ma ei ole Frontexiga, meil loomulikult kolleegid.
As regards Frontex, I'm not involved. The colleagues who collaborate with them, so I can't really give you any details. Sorry, I can't give you a better answer. I have a question as well. Okay, I asked about how the story begins, but how does it end? Okay, you identify it's illegal activity. Then what? Yeah, we detain, we launch the case. What kind of procedure, what kind of sanctions could follow, etc., etc. When these items are confiscated, here we can also bring examples where we have restituted it to the original country. The most recent case I told you, then it ended up in Kumu Museum as an art museum. But we have also the case when it was a smuggling case and the owner was not identified, and then we gave it to the museum in Narva. So we will use them for educational purposes. Thank you. You mentioned a Narva museum, so may I comment? A couple of years ago, our art gallery, we opened an icon room or chamber, and there we displayed items confiscated by customs. It was a major challenge for us. The icon chamber in the museum was a tiny little space. We thought, shall we display them or not? Because most of these icons are not in our permanent collection, but we decided that we will display these cases and we will tell the story, the destiny of the icons or art, tell dramatic stories, tell how cultural goods are preserved or not preserved. So many, many thanks for your work. I encourage all of you to visit the museum in Narva and our art gallery and the icon chamber. Once a month we have thematic tours, and we have an Ukrainian colleague who for 4 years has worked with us, and she is an icon specialist. Thank you. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. Do you also disseminate some statistics? How during the 20-30 years illegal export of cultural property has changed? I didn't take any statistics with me. Definitely we have statistics. We don't have that many discoveries. They've been interesting, big cases, but not too many of them. Now, what has changed?
ennem kui me rahvusliku siseriikliku kultuuriväärtuste väljaveoseadust kehtestasime.
Before our national export regulation was enforced, we only had an EU regulation, and there were opinions that it was a stupid act. This wasn't a stupid act. When we talk about these cases, then they have financial value. For example, for us it's very important, very old farmhouses exported, farm tools. This is our heritage. Well, these items were not really very expensive according to the EU legislations, but in the past there were quantities of such items exported because there were no restrictions. But when we introduced national legislation, the situation changed. The import legislation is relatively new. It's mandatory to have an import license as well. But when this legislation was introduced, actually we started discovering most of the cases as import. There were many icons, numerous cases of icons. Well, they're not always cultural goods, but there are sanctions. And now we have this €300 borderline. There are a number of violations. The world is continuously changing. We do have to keep an eye on import. And definitely, the cases we have experienced won't remain the last coming from the conflict areas. So recently we have had few cases, but well known. And there are less icons, yeah. Definitely a drop in icons. Yes, some time ago there was very many icons. I'm Viljar. We had excellent collaboration experience with you. There was a question, couldn't have a coefficient for the price. Actually, the best methods would be to compare three analogies. Because the historic sites cannot be restored. And insurance companies are also sometimes at a loss how to move forward. Your presentation was very interesting. Thank you. I think, there is one more question. Sorry, I didn't notice you. Good afternoon. In 1999, I was a secretary of the Evaluation Assessment Committee estimating the property of St. Nicholas Church. They are invaluable items, but I'd like to add to Viljar, it's insurance which puts the price. So maybe when we draft a methodology for estimates, we should involve also insurance. Excellent idea. I'm just curious. So when you detain an object, do you have a time frame how fast you have to process, or do you have years for investigation and tracing? Fortunately, according to the EU Customs Code, a lot of discretion. If we need to investigate, there's plenty of time. And so 40,000 is the figure. So if it's under 40,000, then you have 2 years for the misdemeanor procedure. For criminal procedures, you have more time. According to Estonian Law Enforcement Act, we can conduct inspections, detain. So we do have plenty of rights to work well. Thank you.